Welcome, everybody. Hello. Good to see you all. I am excited for this one. We have been prepping for this for a couple of months now, and Kelsey and I are going to be sharing stuff from our background, of course, and the dozens or hundreds of shops we talk to every year. But I'm also super excited to have two people I respect greatly joining to share their wisdom of their building their shops over the years. So it's going to be a good one today. We'll see people are streaming into the room here. As I like to do with almost every webinar, I would love to have you share in the chat where are you coming from, where in the world, what state, city you are coming from, and it's fun to see people from all over the place. And I think, Evan, you have some housekeeping stuff to do, don't you?
Yes, right now I just need to go ahead and say that if anyone has questions for any of our presenters at any time, please use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. That should help us get to them at the end. And with that, without any further ado, Paul, I think you've got this.
All right. Appreciate it, Evan. And thanks to Modern Machine Shop for hosting this. It's always a great partnership with you all, and getting the word out to bring more people to hear hopefully the great things that we're going to share today and our guests are going to share. So let's move through the slides. Always start our webinars with our mission statement. We deliver powerful manufacturing software by deeply understanding our clients' challenges in order to meaningfully improve their businesses and in turn their communities. And that part is so important to all of us, the communities part. As you all know, that work in shops, you are the foundation of everything that gets built in the world. So it's just so critically important that your companies do well. So I want to introduce, obviously myself, I'm Paul, one of the co-founders of ProShop. Kelsey, start with you next, and then we'll move to Brian and Matt.
Hey, thanks everybody for coming. It's great to be here with Modern Machine Shop. And I really just want to double down on what Paul said about the mission. If I could choose to do anything with my life, I would want to live that mission some more tomorrow. I love to get into shops, love to connect with you. Love to get involved in how stuff is made and make it better for all of us. I think it's durable, useful, long-term goods. Like it's the cornerstone of modern civilization. So I'm a fan.
And then Brian, let's jump to you next. Thank you for being here.
Great. Yeah, I'm Brian McCabe, founder and CEO of Machine Sciences Corporation. We're a shop out in the Portland, Oregon area. And we started the shop 23 years ago, and it's just been the last 4 years we've been using ProShop and really love it.
Awesome. And I have been to Machine Sciences, absolutely beautiful facility, new facility. In fact, Brian, I took a picture of it and put it on Google Maps like a couple years ago when I visited, and it's gotten thousands of views. A lot of people want to see your building, apparently. So,
all right, they're all welcome to come and tour.
Yeah. And then next, Matt, good friend for many years now. I'd love to introduce yourself.
My name is Matt Golick. I am president of 3D Graphite Machining. Been using ProShop for a while. I probably could put my flag down and say I'm your number one fan. At least close, right, Paul?
Yes,
pretty close.
I can believe it.
Yeah. So we owe a lot of our success to ProShop, and it's been a great ride. And I've been a student of ERP even before that for a long time, failing at other ERPs, and then finally finding one that works, which is so great. And just really excited to be part of this conversation. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. And so I do business coaching for CNC shops on the side. It's kind of like a hobby. And so, I talk about ProShop almost every day with other shops. So it's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. Appreciate the advocacy. All right, here's the agenda today. We have 6 main topics. We're going to be talking about becoming sales driven, talking about certifications, going paperless, building your team, setting up your company for high throughput and profitability, and then mastering finance in a way that's easy to understand for all of us that aren't CPAs and accountants. So let's dig into it here. So first topic, becoming a sales driven organization. I know that that was a key to our success at Pro CNC. Of all the companies that I have interviewed on my podcast, Machine Shop Mastery, the ones that are doing the best are the ones that are clearly focused on sales, even though it's not necessarily the natural skill set of people that often start machine shops. It is so fundamentally critical. And not only that, but going after niches and being really targeted on a specific markets. Brian, I know you left some notes for this. Maybe we'll open it up and have you share some of your experience here.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think the first point is I came to the business with a sales and marketing background, not a traditional machine shop background. So I started to see the business through those eyes. And one thing I noticed about a lot of shops we went to look at before we opened our doors is that they just seemed to do a lot of everything. You know, they had one machine that did this and one machine that did that. And we started with one Haas VF4. And my natural sales and marketing instinct was, what's the ideal part for this machine? And we ended up just going after aerospace bezels that go in cockpits. And we optimized our programming around that. And then the beauty of it, we were able to turn around and say that we were experts at doing that work to our customers. So it was beneficial on the marketing side, but it was beneficial on the operating side to have a focus on a niche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kelsey and I are both smiling here because we started our shop with a VF4, and we also really focused on keyboard bezels for cockpits. So there's so many similarities. Yeah, and it served us very well to lean deeply into those markets and not trying to, do some highly complex cosmetic bezels one day, and then you tear it down and you do some big, huge A36 steel hog outs the next day, right?
Right.
It's just so difficult. Matt, I know you've been a sort of a sales and marketing master for many years. What's some of the things you might want to share about what's important for businesses that maybe are not focused on that enough today?
Well, I mean, I used to sell cutting tools. When I first started, my grandfather had the Bridgeport line, and my dad sold cutting tools and mold components. And that's how I was a salesman before I started a machine shop, which was 3D Pros a long time ago. And, so I've been in hundreds, if not thousands of shops, or talked to them over the years. All my best friends own shops. And so all the successful shops, they either lucked into some cash cow, or they finally started focusing on sales and then marketing. There's not a lot of CNC shops that know about marketing, but at least sales, which is, good enough, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, all of them, that's really something in common throughout all the great companies I've worked with doing overflow work or selling them products. It was always a sales driven company. And I think a really good example, Paul, is your company, right? No offense to Kelsey. I mean, the genius, you have to have a product to sell, but the sales is the tip of the spear, and I can remember talking to you about that when you started, and I've just been in awe about what you've done. My girlfriend is in marketing, and she's learning about CNC. And I keep referring her to what you're doing, right? And what you've done over the years. And it's like, if everybody just followed your plan, which is not easy, right? I mean, sales and marketing is an art, just like machining, right? And to Brian's point, how many other companies do you know where the owner has a sales and marketing background? I mean, there's not many, right? So they have to either hire somebody. You can hire on, good salesmen and marketing firms. I would say, if you're a company out there and you want to get into sales and marketing, I think the best path is to hire somebody to teach you how to do it. Right? If you hire on somebody to do your marketing, 99% of the time, they're not going to understand the context of CNC machining. We are such a niche. And if you have a niche inside of a niche like mine, I named my company 3D Graphite Machining, so I would never machine anything besides graphite, because my last company, 3D Industries, which was a fun company, we did everything. It was really hard to make money at that, right? Ultimately, I had to sell it. Not that we didn't make money, but now that we have a niche inside of a niche, it's so much easier to make a profit and to do a marketing plan, right? So the tighter niche you have, the easier it is to market. So
yeah. And let's talk about that for a minute. And I do love the advice of hiring someone to help you do it rather than outsourcing it entirely, because you're right, it is very hard to find. I've heard so many stories of people that have hired a marketing agency that are just sort of a general marketing agency,
right.
And they just totally don't get the industry. They don't understand the verbiage. They don't speak in an authentic way that resonates with customers. Some of these bullet points right here are something from a Making Chips episode. For those of you that listen to the Making Chips podcast, we have started a sort of a shop masterclass sort of series where we put little, hopefully jewels of information into a short little segment. I think Sarah's Abra's gonna share. Yep, thank you. There's the link. We will send out, by the way, we're going to share a whole bunch of different other resources and links. And I did forget to mention in the handouts, if you haven't seen it already, click in the little handouts section in the upper right of your screen. There is a worksheet for this webinar. So you can print that off or just pull it up on a PDF or whatever browser and start typing in and sort of work along with us. Because what we really want for you to take away from this is some concrete action steps that you can do to improve in one of these 6 areas, or all of them. But start small, do easy things first. So check out the workbook, and then all the links that we're going to share, we will send out along with the recording and follow-up emails. So you don't need to worry about copying, and I'll put them all in open up tabs and all that. So, but anyway, building a sales engine. So starting with, developing a brand that will resonate with your customers. Clearly we have 2 gentlemen here that have done that. Matt with machining graphite very exclusively, and then Machine Sciences, clearly resonating to grow. And both of you have great logos. Brian, I know you saw me. I posted a picture. I was out go-karting with my family, and I had your shirt on. It's just a beautiful logo, even without the name on there. So anyway, developing a brand and then marketing materials. One of my recent podcast guests said he was talking to another shop that was struggling to win some sales. And he said, well, you have a brochure. And he pulled out something that he said, looked like it was designed in WordPerfect in the 90s, right? And it was still better than nothing, but it was by no means conveying the professionalism of what that company was capable of doing. And then ramping up your sales engine, again, this is easier said than done, to Matt's point, if you're not great at it yourself, hire someone or a coach to help you learn how to get better at it. But it is such a critical thing to do. And then developing that thought leadership. That was one of the key tools of success at Pro CNC. We went really deep on design for manufacturability, doing workshops and newsletters and all sorts of things. And it really helped us become a partner with our clients. And they thought of us more that way than just a vendor that they're, sending parts to.
Yeah, and I would say just on that, in that one piece about developing your value proposition, just sit down and actually, write down the things you're good at, and then force yourself to say the best thing. Like it's stack ranked. You got to pick the top one you're the best at, and if you pick the top 3, you got too many. Pick the top one and start there. Yeah.
Yep. And there's a couple of links here we're going to share. I had a really heartfelt and great conversation with Tom Rougeau from RX Industries just a few weeks ago. Started as a one-man shop. They've grown considerably over the last few years. And he sort of like these, Matt and Brian here, he came in not as a manufacturing expert, but as a sales and marketing person. And he's like, it doesn't really matter what I'm going to sell. I'm going to do that really well. I'm going to focus on that. And he has had huge success with trade shows recently, going to trade shows, walking them, not even exhibiting, walking the shows, talking to, OEM companies. And he said, it's amazing how many of them are sharing that they're having trouble finding suppliers right now. So get out of that comfort zone and go and do that. Another resource for you is another workshop that we did with Emily from Marketing Metal just a few weeks ago as well. Marketing Doesn't Have to Suck workshop, and she also has a great workbook which you can get if you go follow the links we'll share to really focus on how to develop that. And then lastly, for some resources, 2 episodes of our podcast, both companies that are really, really niche-y and talk about the importance of niching down, becoming really an expert in a particular area, and the success will come rather than trying to be a jack of all trades. All right. Any last thoughts on that topic before we move to number 2? Anyone?
I think the other thing that I learned from being sales driven at Pro CNC was you want to be a whole bunch of things, but what you need to be is whatever your sales will actually afford you to be. So you can't do more than your sales are going to allow you to do. So you gotta get in there and have those sales to justify all the rest, and but
yeah. Yep.
I have one quick thing to add.
You bet.
Okay, so I've struggled a lot trying to get shop owners, my friends, let's just say, that own shops that started to struggle from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find it odd that these guys will go out and spend $750,000 on a milling machine, right? But they won't hire on a 6-figure salesman or new website. So it was just always upside down in my experience. So like if you're out there and you own a shop or you're running a shop, you might want to think like that. Like sales is the tip of the spear. It's everything. So where are you putting your efforts? And even if you're busy, sales can help you. Everybody has a customer that's a pain in the butt that you'd like to chop off, and or maybe you can raise your prices, right? Like I have a good friend I've been consulting down the street here, and he started doing sales and marketing and increased his profits by 25%. And he was busy already, but he just got more profitable work in instead of fighting, some of this stuff. So anyway, that's just real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Just think about it. If you don't have purchase orders to make chips with, you can buy all the fancy machines you want, but you're not going to be making chips. So, all right, let's jump into number 2. This is about getting third-party certifications. So, I'm sure on this call, there's a cross-section of companies that have certifications, lots of them, some that have maybe one, and some that don't have any at all. And, when I just kind of look out at the industry, when I talk to people, when I'm in forums and hearing people talk about how busy they are or aren't, there certainly seems to be some common themes that the companies that are the busiest right now, that are thriving, that are growing, by and large, are the ones that have really leaned into, certifications, whether it's quality ones like ISO 9001, AS 9100, or 1345, or API. And then, of course, upcoming now, all the cybersecurity requirements, if you're going to work for the government or the defense industry or space. But in my mind, the importance of a third-party certification, especially the quality ones, is not just to open the doors. It's really to get your company aligned with robust business processes to help improve efficiency, improve quality, improve profitability. I think it's been demonstrated with many studies that companies that are the most profitable are also the ones with certifications. They just run more efficiently. And of course, as we know, it then opens the doors to certifications. And I want to hear from both of our guests here. Maybe start with you, Brian. Machine Sciences holds a bunch of different certifications. And how has that been part of your success as the growth of your business over the years?
Yeah, Paul, I'd say they've been really successful for us, but I'd like to go back to when we started down the path toward AS 9100, which was about 10 years ago now. And it looked like it was, a huge mountain to climb to get all the things done and get all the procedures in place. And I remember thinking, the only way to do this right is really to embrace the standard and not just do it to check the box for a customer requirement, but to do it to improve our operations. And so in many of the ways we implemented, we just did it with our own improvement in mind, rather than trying to check that box for the customer. And now at this point, it's just part of everything we do. And it really has, benefited us in many ways because we systematize things, our quality checks are just part of the way we operate. And so we're just a much better shop because we took that approach to it, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really agree with that one, Brian, and think that sometimes, there's so much going on in shops that you want to get to this next thing. You want to get to that thing. You want to get here. But sometimes if there's a bit of a certification drive, like, hey, we got to get to, this by a certain date, then you prioritize a few of those things. And sometimes prioritizing your own internal processes to be robust and successful, that's a win all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
Matt,
we're doing the same thing now with security, because security is the next big, mountain to climb for customers. CMMC is coming down. And again, I think looking at it from the standpoint of how can this help us rather than how can we just use this to check the box is really the way to approach it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's foundational. And obviously if you're not shipping quality products, or if your servers and company are getting hacked and losing your customers' data, that is a bad place to be in either case. And as you said, Brian, coming at it from that mindset of how can this improve the company and how can we streamline and protect and just do better in our operations, I think that's got to be the foundation of the whole initiative. And then that bonus of the companies that care the most about those things are the ones that are going to be less price sensitive. They're going to have probably longer term contracts. They're going to have more production work. There's so many sort of follow-on positive effects of getting into those industries. I know, Matt, you as well have a lot of certifications in your past. Any additional thoughts to share on this?
Wow, Brian really nailed it. He mirrored every thought that I had, including the security thing. I was going to try to mention that at the end, that security is a big deal going forward, and that's a lot. We're going through that right now, and that's a big deal. I guess my only other thought on that would be, I don't know if everybody that is on this webinar has ProShop, but I can remember going after my ISO certification way back without ProShop, and then going through my AS certification post ProShop, and it was unbelievably easy. You guys provide a framework, right? And all you have to do is just type in your data. You have to be mindful, right? But it's so easy to get these certifications if you have a system in place like that. So I know a lot of other shops that struggle, and I always promote ProShop, saying they built their ERP system around the AS standards, right? So, so that was great. It was really easy for me. I can remember when I realized I had done it right. SpaceX came in, and I can't remember what his name was, but he was the head of engineering for SpaceX and quality, and he said he had never been so impressed on a visit. And I think I told you that, Paul. And I was like, "Holy shit, we got it right." So
I love it.
Yeah, that was
warriors. And this is where I got to give Kelsey all the credit. Back in 2004 to 2006, when our own shop got ISO and then AS certified, Kelsey was like, "I'm not going to have a bunch of spreadsheets to manage this." So he designed, along with Matt, our co-founder, the QMS modules that plugged right into all the ERP stuff. And so good work on
and
that.
If you get a chance, go check out Paul's zero prep audit post.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Abra, for dropping that in the chat. That is really, it's such a foundational principle. And I think it speaks to what you talked about, Brian. If you go into it thinking like, this is the way we're going to run our company, and you try to do that all the time, you don't need to scramble to be prepped for audits. You are always audit ready, which is the safest and most robust way to run a business in the first place.
All right.
So you're closing out your NCRs, you're doing your corrective actions, you're doing your management reviews, you're doing your calibrations, you're doing your training. And of course, ProShop can help with all those things, but it's just so important to do that. Here's just a handful, a very small sample of logos of companies that have gotten certifications through ProShop, either just using our modules or even us helping them actually go get those certifications with our consulting services. So yeah, really grateful for everyone that's trusted us to help them do that. And it's fantastic to see the results in their businesses. All right, let's talk number 3. We're going to go into getting all your data in one spot. Brian, I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart, both of you as well, of course, but I know you put some notes in here. Do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. I think that, when we really made the leap to getting everything into our first ERP system was when we realized that we couldn't keep track of all the work that was in the shop. You just reached a point where you don't know what's on each machine. You can't recall which parts are out at OSP and so forth. And so, we started with a different ERP system and got part of the way there. What ProShop did for us, though, is we went completely paperless. And by doing that, we have, screens, touch screens at every machine in the shop, every workstation in the shop. And so what that means is all the data goes into one system, and it's also accessible and real time at any given point in time, which really makes all the difference, because you want to be able to tell your customers where their job is within your shop. You want to, know yourself where things are within your shop. It makes scheduling easier. It makes communication easier. You just reach that point where your size dictates that you have to get everything in one place. And then things just become much more streamlined at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that I've seen, and I see you do it really well, and other clients, that it starts to encourage this contribution effect, where when people think that there's a place that people will look, hey, it's going to be here because that's the only place we put stuff and it's available for everybody, they tend to start contributing, like, this isn't going to get lost underneath someone's or disappear into the never. It's going to be here the next time someone opens up this job, right? Like, and that gets that sort of engagement, interaction. People start putting their efforts into it.
Yeah, and if the only vehicle is typing it in or writing it into a screen rather than putting it on paper, it's going to stay there. So your tribal knowledge and your setup knowledge and all those things, they get recorded in the system for future use.
Yep. And Matt, I know that this is a topic near and dear to your heart as well. I saw you do that, exceptionally well at 3D Industries, and I'm sure still now at 3D Graphite. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. First, I would say that if you're out there and you're trying to go paperless, that this was one of the biggest hurdles that I ran into, just because of old habits. Anytime you want to implement an ERP or a new system or whatever, it's just, the people that we hire these days are not really replaceable, right? And a lot of times guys have old habits. So when you have unreplaceable people with big egos, it's really hard to get them to do something new. So I dog train also on the side, and my dog trainer taught me about habits. And there's a really good book out there called Atomic Habits. And when we were pushing all of our people to really, it's not just paperless. It's like, actually the way that we sold it was like, if we had to go all in on ProShop, because, I have a lot of friends that use ProShop at different levels. And my whole thing is like, if you go all in on ProShop, like all in the way it was designed and why Kelsey and everybody designed it the way they did, it makes way more sense than if you just do it to 20% or 30% or 40%. And now we're even trying to push it even further. We're actually using APIs to wrap all of our data from HubSpot, Salesforce, so it's marketing software, our CRM, QuickBooks, Traction, because I love Traction by Gino Wickman. So they have a software where you can have meetings, and we're tying it all into like one dashboard. So we're basically into ProShop, and Matt Rohde's been working at for us for a while, and so that's like next level paperless. But it's all in the same context. So yeah, it's like, I guess it's like really you got to try to get your guys to buy in by forcing them to have good habits with that. I think would be the best suggestion. It's hard to do.
It is, and I know I remember the story early on of when I can't remember if it was around time tracking or putting in data, but you had back at 3D Industries, you had a machinist or someone that said, "No, I'm not doing that."
Oh, the guy I fired?
Let him go the very next day, right?
Well, that was the thing, right? Yeah, I mean, we'd have these meetings, and to let these guys know that we were serious, because doing that real complex, ultra precision, multi-process machining. Again, you've got massive egos inside that building, and I wanted to show them that I was serious. So I said, "Hey, the next person to push back's getting fired." And then I went to my first employee, Bob, who's still with me, thank God. And I said, "Please don't let it be you, because I'm going to fire the next person that gives me any grief, and I don't care who it is." But anyway, it wasn't 20 minutes later where we got a winner, and I walked him right out the door. And since that particular instance, we really haven't had any pushback since. All the people, they get it, right? But you just have to put your foot down. Running a paperless system is so easy once you start, right, Brian? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's like night and day. Like, I can't even imagine how I did this back in the past with all these setup sheets and the paper in my shop. It was so much stacks of paper, because aerospace machining, I mean, if you wanted to go to school for that, you'd have to go to school for paperwork, just all paperwork. Why would you want that scattered everywhere? Anyway, I could tell you hilarious stories about aerospace companies I go to where everything's in files.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to anybody watching that's still on files. I get how hard it is to switch over, but oh my God, like paper files. I don't know how anybody can do it. I mean, kudos to you if you could run your shop without being paperless.
That's the ironic part. It seems so hard to get rid of, and once you've done it, you can't imagine how you did it the old way.
Oh my God! And even our training, we started putting our training and videoing it, pictures and things like that recently. That's really not paperless. I guess it is kind of, but it's that same context. Like, everything goes in a ProShop, just except for everything. Everything goes in. That's it.
So I failed to mention we're launching some polls after each section. I guess hopefully you've been getting those. So thanks for participating in those, filling those in. And we'll keep moving here to stay on track. A couple more resources again for hopefully to inspire you. Did a case study a couple years ago with Beacon Industries, a really cool shop down in Texas. They make this portion, the rotating plate and uprights of these things that launch missiles on big ships. And they used to be a paper-based company. As you can see here on the screen, just massive cost reductions, time reductions. When they told me they saved 25 grand just in paper and toner per year, which was a good way towards their entire ProShop subscription, I was like, holy cow, that that is wonderful. Saving some trees. All right, let's get into topic number 4. This is where Matt and Brian are really going to take center stage here. Both of them are really into traction and EOS and have seen massive impacts on how they run their businesses. I'd love to have you guys sort of kick us off here.
I mean, I can't even talk. That GIF is just killing me. The greatest unintentional comedy of all time was that movie that girl, second from the right, did. I don't remember that, but
I did not remember that.
Anyway, sorry. Tangent. Speaking of traction. Go ahead, Brian. Do you have any?
Yeah. Well, we've adopted EOS as well, and we did this a couple years before adopting ProShop. And I guess I would just have to say I'm, from a culture standpoint, I'm a fan of EOS, but it also works extremely well with AS9100 and with ProShop. And I think just the whole concept of building a team, managing a team, keeping a clean and exciting culture does so much for the business. We had a fractional EOS coach, and one of the things he said to us early on is that culture is what you're willing to put up with. And we found we were putting up with just too much, bad stuff from employees. And so I think taking control of that and deciding to intentionally create a positive culture, along with the systems that you have in place, is just a very powerful business idea, and one that just helps you produce better profits and better success.
Yeah.
I could talk for days on this subject, but let's think of what would be the most important thing. I think, like, to understand the context of traction, it's the end result, which is the whole beauty of traction is to have a really good meeting. And most people don't even know how to have meetings, right? So, like, to solve root problems versus solving symptoms. And that takes a lot of practice. But you have to have a good team to be able to do that. So that starts with the org chart. So I can remember when we implemented I always suggest implementing traction first before you start a new ERP, or definitely ProShop. Get all your ducks in a row first before you put in this like massively disruptive but awesome system. It is going to disrupt everything. You got to have the right people in place. So let's see. So I can remember looking at your org chart that you guys designed.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I couldn't believe it when I first saw it. I was like, okay, now. So I had to envision a future org chart, which is where I wanted my company to go first, and then I did the org chart that I had, and I had everybody put in their names. Mm-hmm. And my company was like, it was a disaster. It was like everybody was like a hat model. Every day they're putting on a different hat, or every minute, right? And so it took about 2 years to get that fixed, believe it or not. I always tell this one story. Like one of my best friends was working for me as a project manager. And speaking of teams, so he was a manager. Most managers in the CNC world love everything about being a manager: the money, the badge, telling people what to do, but they do not like the management part of management. Mm. And so when I figured that out, it changed my company forever. And it took me a long time to get there. And I invite everybody to read Traction and really dive into ProShop's org chart. To Brian's point, go hire on a business coach. I do that for people. It'll change everything about your business, and it'll really help with the implementation of ProShop. I don't know how anybody could do it without having that fundamental communication structure up front, that top level context of root problem solving. I wouldn't want to even try to implement an ERP or run a shop without that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap between, having good meetings, having, like you said, root cause, and organizing change management, which is what's required as you switch any big system, whether it's a CRM or an ERP or implementing lean or whatever. And having, super clear goals and responsibilities and timelines, and supporting people through that change, because change is hard and people are afraid of it and resist it oftentimes. Just so important. And then just get to a couple of these bullet points, again, coming back to the podcast, it's amazing how common, these bigger, more successful shops are, where they have clear mission, vision, and values documented, published. They live and breathe by them. They hire by them. They fire by them. They make decisions about customers by them. And it really is, I think, a foundational piece for having a great culture, having trust with your team, with your customers. And so if you don't have those, I'd say put that on the short list of things you probably want to work on next. All right. Continuing on, just to make sure we stay on track. Shared a little bit. I shared and Abra's going to share in the chat again. Thank you, Abra. I shared a talk at a local aerospace conference here in Seattle in February, where I talked about how to recruit better, how to onboard better, and how to get more out of your team, just in general. It wasn't really a ProShop pitch at all, but I think it's so foundational and so important that every shop needs to hear this. Some of the principles of the hiring and recruiting came from the book by, oh gosh, it shouldn't escape my mind right at this very second. It'll come to me. It was a great book. Chris Zarnick, Winning the War for Talent. Winning the War for Talent by Chris Zarnick. Fantastic book. Really, thinking outside the box for how to get noticed in this very competitive industry with recruiting. So encourage you to go check that out. And then, we're going to talk about sort of getting more throughput. A lot of what we've talked about so far, I think, leads up to this topic, getting higher throughput on the shop floor, having higher productivity, right? You can't do that. Well, it's harder to do that with things on paper, without a good team, without, enough work, positive sales pressure, Kelsey and I like to call it.
Yeah.
That you have plenty of work to choose from. You're not trying to, just scramble to keep your machines full. Hard to be profitable when you're in that mode. I'd love to open up to any of the three of you to share any thoughts on this one.
Well, I'd like to just harken a little bit back to the niche component about optimizing shop floor. If you're back in a niche, something that you understand and do really well, this optimization comes a little bit for free, in the sense that you get to do the same kinds of things, albeit all different components, but you have the same processes, or you have the same configurations, and that optimization through repetition starts to become more natural. And then for those things that are nuanced and different between each of the components, that's where the documentation and the having it all available at your fingertips at any time, and sharing those learnings so that you can update other processes that share the same problems. That kind of brings it all together a little bit around those tools.
I love that you said that. Yeah. When you're switching from, a vacuum fixture to some big, massive jig that you need for this massive part or whatever, it's changing out the entire carousel of tools, because none of them are similar, because you're doing so many different types of things. That's really hard. And we learned those lessons time and again at Pro CNC, eventually coming up with what we called our triple threat for things that we didn't want to do if a job had hard materials, tight tolerances, and cosmetics all in the same part. That wasn't for us. We were going to niche down and be good at some of those different things exclusively. But Matt or Brian, any thoughts about how whether ProShop's kind of helped you with throughput and productivity, or just general concepts in overall?
I would say that ProShop started, how do I put this? Like, I can remember before ProShop where I didn't have good data to create measurables to optimize, right? It was always a guesswork. Like, we're getting killed on this job. Well, what does that mean? Am I losing $500 a day, $1,000 a day? I don't understand that. Everything was kind of opinion. But then when we started tracking everything, we could put in measurables. That was fantastic. I don't know how you would ever, because when you could see, what a new fixture can bring you with setup time, or a new idea with scheduling, I can tell you one thing that we do now. We started doing this about 3 months ago. We started scheduling continual improvement as internal jobs. That's something that
Nice.
I've never done
Kaizen
before.
work
And that comes from traction with rocks, right? The rock idea, right? So, man, has that been great? I mean, there was one repeat job that I do, and we logged 4 hours on testing new cutting tools, and it's going to save me $37,000 a year.
That's
Now
time
think
well
about that for a second, right? Like, where can you make that much money on a job? You're never going to make that kind of money on a job ever, right? I mean, that's insane. So the continual improvement, like, it just, the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, what am I doing? I look back and I want to kick myself in the butt for not thinking about this before, but like, it really shined the light in my brain. And I was like, wow, like, I can't profit at that rate on anything else besides continual improvement. Something like that. Something that I'm already running that I can improve, like the hours that I invest versus the return. So, and again, you have to force your guys to do that, because everybody is, again, they have these habits. Like my first employee, Bob, who's just an absolute machine, one of the best 5-axis programmers on the planet. He is focused on just getting work out. That is it. He's got blinders on, right? So when I talk to him about using a new cutting tool, it's like he wants to kill me, like stab me in the eye with a cutting tool, because he just wants to get work out. He's got no time. But so once we started forcing him to take a step back and start looking at continue, but then once they saw the profits that we have from that, we haven't been doing it for that long. Now he's changed his habits. Now every meeting that we have every week, he's got 10 ideas on how we can improve the shop, because they can actually see. So I would suggest scheduling it in as like an internal job.
That's great. Yeah, Kelsey used to push us to do Kaizen work orders all the time back at Pro CNC. Document a process of improvement and schedule it, put it on the books, and you're going to do it.
Right.
So.
And I like that expectation component that you have there, Matt. Like, set the expectation in the company. We expect people to log 3%, 5%, whatever you pick, on improvement. Like, I want to see it in the numbers. If I see 1% next month on improvement, that's a problem, right?
Yeah, and those on ProShop that are on the call today will know that in the user page, for every single user, you can set your targets for how much they be spending their time on jobs, and that sort of Kaizen improvement activity category is right there as well, and as well as training, and such an important thing to focus on. Brian, you have any thoughts on this before we move along?
Can I say one more real quick thing before I forget? Sure. It's just flashing in my head. I'm looking at my notes. Just real quick. Okay. So one of the reasons why I love ProShop is because if you follow the ProShop context, it puts more responsibility on the shop lead out in the shop, right? So before we had ProShop, all the decisions were made by the engineering department or me, right? And I'm the sales and marketing guy, CEO, president, knucklehead. And then we'd send it out to the shop floor, and they'd have to deal with it. But now that we follow ProShop and you have a shop lead, we give them so much responsibility, and accountability. It just changed the whole communication structure and productivity in our shop, and it's just a different type of culture. The structure is amazing. So I always sell that to people when I'm out talking with other shops about how they should think about, running that, even if they don't run ProShop, just that context of giving them more responsibility and accountability out in the shop versus sending the information down from up top.
Yeah, that goes right back to the building your team and culture section.
Right.
I guess the only thing I'd add here, Paul, is that another part of optimization is planning and organization. And, it's one thing to optimize the runtime on a part, but if you are not ready with your tools, fixtures, material, program, everything's not ready to go when you're ready to move that job onto a machine, you're going to end up wasting a huge amount of time. And so, having, again, everything in a system where you know where that fixture is, where you keep your tool libraries, where you have your programs organized, so that when it comes to setup, you're, literally ready to go. You're not out looking for the fixture that's lost in the shop somewhere.
Yep.
That makes a huge difference in, just optimizing the overall shop performance.
Yeah, and that's the pre-processing checklist that Kelsey designed so many
Yep.
years ago.
That has saved us so much money, Kelsey.
Well,
Yeah,
Paul
good
did an
work.
amazing little blurb on the checklist, the power of the checklist.
God,
Not lost. Yep.
so great.
Yep, in the chat. So so many so many resources. All right, we got it. We're a little behind schedule. We're going to move along here. Just a couple of resources for you. Fantastic case study and video that we did with one of another clients, Coastal Machine, Cody here. They went from around 50 to 60% on time to over 95% plus for an entire year, just by focusing on some of these things we've been talking about. It really can make a huge impact. And then JJR Engineering, Kevin and Brian over there, massive reductions in setup times by focusing on what you just said, Brian, making sure everything is prepped and ready before you start the job. The last time you should be looking at what's coming up next is when you've done breaking down the last job. You're like, okay, what job is next, right? That is just a recipe for spindle downtime, lots of waste, lots of problems. So you can check out some of those. And now let's get into the last section. Kelsey, I know you're going to take a big part of this. And we should probably probably try to do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll make this one. This is the simple way, right? We can do it in 5 minutes if we're going to do it the simple way. I mean, there's a lot to think about in finances. And certainly there are a huge number of benefits to having a good CPA and people who can, optimize your taxes, and people who understand how, accounting softwares work in order to give you, some of the best, cleanest software based books, but that there's also another huge component of understanding and really being able to dig in on what works and what doesn't from a financial perspective. And I would say traditional accounting softwares are not particularly good at this. You have to give them a lot of information, but also a lot of times just even the structure of, the sort of double-sided ledger accounting software makes it harder to sometimes tease out where the issues really are, and certainly doesn't give you the insight into the specific details of why a particular part number might have gone over in this instance but been good in this scenario as well. So being able to watch these kinds of things like overage alerts, and even being able to watch the profitability of jobs in real time. So you're like, oh, we're 30% of the way through the job, how's the profitability so far, is really impactful. And part of the way to probably think about that is that there are a huge number of complicated components to accounting in general, but there's also some simple buckets. And in this particular case, like in ProShop, we do 4, basic buckets, and it makes things a lot more understandable in terms of where do we need to go digging for a little more information if one of these is out of alignment. Right. And then the other thing about this is, with this set of cost criteria, one of the biggest things that ProShop will deliver, and I think you need to think about, even if you're not using ProShop, is how to account for some of that indirect overhead to get to true net profit by job. Because it sounds like, indirect overhead, that just goes across all jobs. I'm not exactly sure how to spread that, but it matters. And especially if you include direct overhead, those two components of overhead really make a big difference. It's a huge difference to be assembling something on a bench and to be having your, multi-pallet 5-axis horizontal machining center that cost you $1 million working on it, right? Those are significant cost differences, and you need to know how that activity-based costing is really affecting you. So definitely thinking about finances from a somewhat simplistic view, but then being able to dive in and say exactly where are my misalignments, and being able to combine those things as well across jobs. So like, you make a fixture and it's good for the right hand and the left hand part. How do you associate the costs from fixture to the finished parts? Is that something people often just throw in overhead? It's like, well, that doesn't make as much sense, but what is the right way to connect those things? And so using systems that can connect some of those costs together and give you more insight into where the real costs came from. Of course, it's about data and getting good data, but that's something we're actually pretty good at. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Brian, you had some thoughts as well. We're going to open up, we are tight on time here. We're going to open up the Q&A. And while we do that, I'm also going to share the contact information for these fellows. Thanks so much, both of you, for putting your personal email addresses out for the world to see. And because I appreciate how much you're sharing the success of your own businesses and giving back to the community. So there we have a few questions here, a couple of really good ones that are coming in here. I'm going to start with the one from Mark Miller. Paperless sounds great, but how many different part numbers do you have? I'll say conceptually, probably the more part numbers you have, the more important paperless is. But Brian, I'm sure both of you, it must be in the many thousands of part numbers you process each year.
Yeah, it's many thousands, and I just don't know how we could do it without a paperless system.
Yeah, I know some of our clients have upwards of, 15, 20,000 part numbers that they process, somewhat frequently, annually or more often than that even. It's just like it compounds on itself, right? Imagine the filing cabinets required for 10,000 part numbers, and the chance of misfiling something or losing something. It's just, it's a crazy concept. And then Robbie here had a great question. Will being a niche shop not put you at risk versus being a shop that can flatten out the ebbs and flows with different types of work? I'd love to open that for Brian, you or Matt.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. No, I mean, he's got a point. You always have to have an open mind. But, I had a guy the other day ask me to run, short run production on some aluminum parts. And I thought about it, but, I ended up just calling one of my friends and gave him the contact information. And just, but I don't know. I just had a really bad taste in my mouth from trying to do too many different types of materials with too many different industries. It just as a business model, you got to get to as close as a McDonald's business model as possible. That's just, but there's always exceptions to the rule. I mean, so.
Yeah. Brian, what would you say?
Yeah, my thought is you need to have a niche, but you can get your diversity from a wider customer base that has similar requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Brian, is that I think that being in an industry that's somewhat niche is one thing, like if it's just industry, but it might be a process or a style, like, you're into this kind of machining that does this thing that might not just be for one industry or one customer, right? But it's this particular style and process and combination of things you do well.
Right.
Yeah.
Like trying to do prototype and production is very hard. You almost have to start a separate company to do the prototyping.
Yeah, we had separate divisions, totally different value streams, different people, different machines, and that worked really well for us. But yeah, trying to mix them together is so challenging. Yeah. I know, Brian, you guys do tons of prototypes, and that leads into production. But there's still probably similar types of geometries and materials and part families and things like that, right?
Yeah, we've managed to mix them pretty well, but I agree it's very challenging.
And the last thing I would say on this is the stronger your sales and marketing game is, the more you don't have to worry about trying to spread across many industries, because you can, when you have that positive sales pressure always coming in, you can afford to be really niche-y. And it is important to have a wide variety of clients. You don't want, when we say niche down, we don't mean 80% of your business with one company and one type of part. You really want some diversity there as well. And then, okay, a couple more questions. We have one more minute or here. Once you establish your niche, you make the tech to apply to other markets, correct? Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Yeah.
Yep.
We will take these questions and try to get with those directly because we can't get to all of them right now. So I think with that, we need to sort of wrap it up because we are at the top of the hour here. But Brian, Matt, thank you so much for being here and again sharing your wisdom with the audience. Thank you to everyone that came today. Thank you, Kelsey, for your wisdom and designing great features a long time ago that everyone's benefiting from.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you.
And thank you to Modern Machine Shop for hosting us.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. It's been a really good one.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yes, thanks everyone. As a reminder, today's presentation has been recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing shortly after we conclude today. With that, thank you for taking the time out of your week to listen, and have a great rest of your week.
Cheers, everybody.